It's late, the lights are off, and instead of sleeping, you're the main character in a story that doesn't exist. Maybe you're giving a speech that leaves an entire room speechless. Maybe you're having the conversation you never got to have, the one where you finally say exactly the right thing. Maybe you've invented an entirely different life, a different city, a different version of yourself who is a little braver, a little freer, a little more everything you wish you were during the day. And you do this almost every night, and nobody knows. Here's what's fascinating about that. You are not alone, not even close. Research suggests that the vast majority of people engage in some form of pre-sleep fantasy or imaginative scenario building on a regular basis. It's so common that psychologists have given it a name, hypnagogic ideation, the tendency of the mind to drift into vivid, self-directed narratives in the transitional state between waking and sleep. But here's what nobody talks about. It isn't random. The specific scenarios you build, the specific versions of yourself you inhabit, the specific conversations you replay and rewrite, they're not just entertainment. They're telling you something. And understanding what they're telling you changes everything about how you see this habit. Let's start with why it happens at night specifically. During the day, your brain is externally focused. There are things to do, people to respond to, problems to manage. The default mode network, the part of your brain responsible for self-referential thinking, imagination, and internal narrative, gets suppressed when you're engaged with the outside world. But at night, when external demands drop away and the room goes dark, the default mode network comes fully online, and it does what it was built to do. It tells stories. It runs simulations. It asks the question the daytime brain never has time to ask: what do I actually want? And here's where it gets genuinely interesting. The scenarios people build before sleep are rarely random. They follow patterns. Psychologists who study pre-sleep ideation consistently find that the content of these scenarios reflects unmet needs, things the person is longing for but hasn't found a way to access in waking life. The person who fantasizes about being deeply understood is often someone who feels chronically unseen in their daily interactions. The person who imagines standing up for themselves, finally saying the thing, finally holding the boundary, is often someone who struggles to do that in real life. The person who builds elaborate alternate lives in their head is often someone whose actual life contains something they haven't yet figured out how to change. The fantasy isn't an escape from reality, it's a map of it. But there's another layer, and this one is about something older than psychology. Human beings are the only species that runs mental simulations of futures that haven't happened. This capacity to imagine, to rehearse, to pre-experience is one of the things that makes us uniquely human. And evolutionarily, it served a very real purpose. By mentally rehearsing difficult conversations, confrontations, and situations before they occurred, our ancestors increased their chances of navigating them successfully when they did. So when you lie in bed rehearsing that conversation you're afraid to have, or imagining how you'd handle a situation you're worried about, your brain isn't wasting time. It's doing exactly what it evolved to do. It's preparing you. The only difference is that your brain can't always tell the difference between a genuinely useful rehearsal and a purely pleasurable fantasy. So it runs both. And you let it, because both feel meaningful in their own way. Now here's what's fascinating about the people who do this most intensely. Research in the area of imaginative immersion, the degree to which someone can become genuinely absorbed in a self-created mental world, suggests that people with high imaginative immersion tend to score significantly higher in empathy, creativity, and emotional intelligence. The same capacity that lets you build a vivid alternate world in your head before sleep is the same capacity that lets you understand other people's inner lives, create things that move other people, and process your own emotions with nuance and depth. This isn't daydreaming as avoidance. This is a highly sophisticated form of mental processing, and the brain that does it at night is, in many ways, one of the most emotionally intelligent brains in the room. Let's be honest about something, though. There's a version of this that stops serving the person when the pre-sleep fantasy world becomes so much more satisfying than waking life that the person starts withdrawing from real relationships and real experiences in favor of the internal world When the imagined version of life becomes the preferred version, that's a signal worth paying attention to. The fantasy was always meant to be a map, not a destination. Psychologists have identified something called maladaptive daydreaming, a pattern where imaginative fantasy becomes so consuming and so preferable to reality that it significantly interferes with daily functioning. It's different from the universal healthy experience most people have, and if that description feels very close to home, it might be worth talking to someone about it. But for most people, most of the time, the pre-sleep scenario is something genuinely valuable. It's a space where you get to be the version of yourself you're still working toward, where you get to have the conversations you haven't been brave enough to have yet, where you get to live the life you're still building. It's not delusion, it's rehearsal. It's desire made visible in the only space where it can exist completely freely, the space between the world going quiet and you finally going to sleep. And here's the thing about desire made visible. It shows you what you actually want, not what you think you should want, not what makes sense on paper, what you actually genuinely deeply want. The kind of wanting that survives the quiet and the dark and the absence of distraction. That version of you who stands up in the scenario, who says the thing, who lives somewhere different, who is loved in the exact right way. They're not imaginary. They're just early. They're the version of you that your nighttime brain already knows is possible, even when your daytime brain isn't sure yet. The scenarios aren't fake. They're just ahead of schedule. If this finally describes something you've never heard anyone put into words before, subscribe to Brain Decoded. And the next time you catch yourself 3 scenes deep into a story that doesn't exist, remember, your brain is doing something remarkable. Let it.